Hi, this is YouTube Vids, and welcome to part 1 of my multi-part web development series where I'm going to teach you the basics of HTML5. What we will cover in this session is what is HTML, who defines the HTML language, and we will create and browse our first web page using a myriad of HTML tags. HTML is the language of the World Wide Web. Without HTML, web pages wouldn't exist, and neither would some of your most favorite websites. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and its specifications are defined by the W3C, also known as the World Wide Web Consortium. The W3C provides the technical specifications that browser developers should follow to display content to an end user, and HTML5 is the latest and greatest version of their specification. To learn more about the W3C and review their HTML specifications, you can visit them at www.w3.org/html. Now that we know some of the background of HTML, it's time we get started on putting together our first bare minimum HTML document. The first thing you're going to want to do, which I'm not going to cover in much detail at all, is it's preferable if you create a folder somewhere on the desktop. So go to your desktop and create a new folder, and then open that new folder similar to what I have here. This isn't on my desktop, but the same idea applies. So you would create a new folder on your desktop, open up that folder, and then put any documents that we create in this folder. And you may want to organize it the same way as well too. So as we go through, I'm going to have different folders for each type of each section that we go through in the series. So once you have your folder created, the first thing that we're going to want to do, which I did not cover in the first video, is you're going to want to go to your view menu in Windows and then make sure that you have this box checked, file name extensions. The reason why that's important is if you're looking at files in Windows, Windows by default does not have file name extensions checked, and you don't see the file extension of the document. So if you just had a file named hello that was a Word document, for example, you would just see the word hello and nothing else after it. When you have file name extensions enabled in Windows, you would see that document named hello.doc or hello.docx. Anything including the dot and after the dot essentially is the file extension of that file according to Windows, or a file extension that Windows recognizes usually. So make sure you have the file name extensions turned on, and then once you have that done, you can essentially right click anywhere in your folder. Don't worry, your context, this is known as a context sensitive menu for anyone who's not familiar with the way menus work. This is a context sensitive menu, meaning based on what I right clicked on this blank area and it's going to give me this menu. If I right click on somewhere else or on a file, for example, that gives me maybe a similar menu but then a slightly different menu. So that's why it's referred to as context sensitive menu. But either way, you want to right click to go to new, and then you can essentially say just text document. That's good enough. And again, like the options you have for what type of new document you want to create will definitely be different than mine, but you should always have text document as an available option. So you're going to choose text document, and then we're going to name this thing bare minimum, if I can spell right. Now, the first thing before you hit enter to say that, to confirm that file name, you actually want to highlight this .txt portion and then type in over it HTML. So bare-minimum.html. Then you want to hit your enter key, confirming you want this file. Now Windows is going to say, I'm not really sure what this file is. Are you sure you want to change that extension? You're going to say yes. And so now, if you notice, because I have Google Chrome set as my default web browser, the icon of the file changed to that of Google Chrome, and it also says it's a Chrome HTML document. Now, one thing I do want to point out as well, you can open this document as is right now. You're not going to see anything, but you can open up this document as is right now and view a web page. One other thing I did not cover in the introductory video is that after you installed Chrome, assuming you installed Chrome, Chrome should open. If it doesn't open, you'll want to open it. And Chrome will ask you, when you open Chrome alone by itself, it will ask you if you want to make Chrome your default browser. It's up to you whether or not you want to make it your default browser. If you do, then you don't need to worry about this next set of instructions I'm going to give you. But if you don't, you're going to want to follow this next set of instructions I give you, just so that you understand how to open these files differently. So by default, if this is an HTML, since this is associated to Chrome, if I can just double click this file, and it's going to open in a different window for me, so I'm going to drag it over here. But you're going to see it opened up in a different window for me, and it opened up in Chrome. Now, if you have your default browser set to Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge or Firefox, you're going to want to do something different. You're going to want to right click on this file. You're going to want to go to Open With, and then you're going to want to choose your appropriate browser here. So you should, or actually you want to choose Google Chrome. I'm sorry, you want to choose Google Chrome. You'll see your other browsers listed here that you have installed, but you're definitely going to want to choose Google Chrome as your option to open up the file. And that way it will open in Google Chrome. So that way you're not forced to make Google Chrome your default browser if you don't want it to be, but it's there for the purpose of following along with these videos. So if you didn't install Google Chrome for the fear of it forcing you to be the default browser or anything like that, or you not being able to understand how to go back and forth, now you know. And if you want to take a minute, pause this video, go back to the previous one, get the download link, and go ahead and install Chrome so that you can come back to here and then move forward and be using Chrome. But either way, so we're going to go forward here. So we have our HTML document. Again, it's blank. There's nothing in this document. So now that we saw what a context sensitive menu is, you can see that, you know, when you click in the right click in the empty area, you have different options. Then when you right click on the file, you don't have some of those same options. You have some similar options, but not all of them are the same. Most of them aren't the same. But what we're going to want to do is if you installed Notepad++, which you definitely should have, if you didn't, be sure to install it. It's going to make a world of a difference when working on these files. So edit with Notepad++ is going to be an option in your context sensitive menu. So you're going to want to go ahead and click edit with Notepad++. It will open with Notepad++, and I'm going to open this in a separate instance here, so don't worry about what I just said there, not applicable to you. So it will open up this bare minimum.html file in Notepad++. So you should be able to see Notepad++, and if you arrange your windows accordingly, you can see your file here and then your Notepad++. If you didn't get that, go back in the video, take your time, don't rush yourself, don't feel rushed. Again, this is kind of follow at your own pace. And do these things however it makes you feel comfortable. If you're a more novice user of Windows, then you have your own certain way of doing this, go ahead and do it that way. So once you have bare minimum.html opened up in Notepad++, one of the first things that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to start constructing our HTML document. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to type in a less than sign, an exclamation point, and in uppercase the word doctype, DOCTYPE, and then space, and then the word or acronym HTML, or abbreviation I should say, HTML. So what this does, the reason why this tag is important in your HTML documents or HTML5 documents is that this tells Notepad++, or sorry, this tells the web browser that this is an HTML5 document. In the past, and I'm only showing this for display purposes, you understand the reason why you do this. In the past, an HTML document would be defined like this, or there would be like a data type definition that would follow the HTML tag and so on. Basically, any version of an HTML document that looks like this, the web browser will render using HTML4 logic. So that means if you create a document that uses just this HTML tag without the doc type in front like this, the browser may not understand certain tags that are specific to HTML5. So that is the importance of using this doc type tag. And again, this is why we're creating this bare minimum file. This is going to be the basic construct of any HTML document that you were ever to put together. So now that we have our doc type HTML tag, we're gonna go ahead and again we're gonna add some more tags to this. But before we go ahead and do that, it looks like Notepad++ is not. I don't see syntax highlighting going on, so that was one of the first things that you'll notice. I'm gonna go ahead and show you what this looks like, just for the heck of it. I'm gonna show you what this looks like in Notepad, if this actually is an option. Here it is. Okay. So this is what if you wanted to edit in Notepad, this is what this is going to look like. So right now you're looking at Notepad++ and Notepad and saying, well, what's the difference? I mean, they look the same. The only difference is this thing's got a bunch of crazy menus and options. This looks very basic and easy, right? Yes, that's true. The one thing that you'll notice is different though in Notepad versus Notepad++ is that Notepad++ is going to have line numbers. And again, that may not be as important for HTML editing, but it will be important once we get into JavaScript and well, not so much CSS, but mainly JavaScript. When we get into JavaScript editing, it's going to be important. So right now they all look the same. They both look the same. Now, the one thing to do to change that, and trust me, you won't have to do this every time you open up a document. It depends on the content of the document. Depending upon the content of the document, Notepad++ will try to interpret what language to automatically choose or apply to that document. Because we created this, this is kind of weird to me. Even though it's an HTML document, Notepad++ should know better that it's an HTML document and it should already have the syntax highlighting in there, but it doesn't because there's no content in it. So we're gonna go ahead and manually and click this language menu option. Go to the H, the H for HTML. Oh, it does determine HTML. Okay, well, that's my overlook. So we'll see how this looks then once we continue further down. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize the Notepad, basic Notepad editor for now. So we have our doc type HTML tag. Now we're gonna want to say, okay, now this is also an HTML document. So I guess there's just no syntax highlighting for the doc type. So we're going to say, okay, now I'm going to define the content of my HTML document. So this tells the browser again that this is an HTML5 document, and then this says, okay, now here's the beginning content of my HTML document. So an HTML document, again, this just defines the document. This says this is an HTML document. Within the HTML document, they have what is known as, HTML is known as what is known as a head tag. A head tag is a location where you would, or a section more or less, where you would define the title of a document, references to external cascading style sheets, external JavaScript, or even internal cascading style sheet code and internal JavaScript code. You can almost completely ignore those last few things I mentioned because they're not going to be relevant right now, but it is important that you may want to note them down for future reference, because then when we get to future sessions, then it'll start to click. But for now, we have our head tag, which basically defines the header of the document. There's other things that can go in the head tag as well, but not really relevant, and we're not going to cover them during any of these sessions because they're not going to be something you use all the time. So you have the head tag. Now, one thing that goes inside a head tag is your title tag. Now, a title tag is if you open up your bare minimum HTML with Chrome, and again, if Chrome's your default browser, just double click it and open up in Chrome. You notice at the top of the tab here, this just says bare-minimum.html. It's because this is just the default name that the browser gave the document, or the default title the browser gave the document, because there was no title specified for the document. So this is the title of the document. So if I say my cool web page, that's fine and dandy. Now, one thing that you should know about HTML is that HTML is a language, and a language involves syntax. Syntax is basically a set of rules that you must follow in order for something for this document to render correctly. We'll just put it in those terms. For this document to render correctly. Syntax is also valid for code. If the compiler doesn't understand your syntax, then it won't compile. So the difference between that and HTML, though, is that HTML is not a compiled language. So HTML is more finicky that way. You don't necessarily know whether or not you've got all the right opening and closing tags, but that's where editors like Notepad++ come into play. Standard Notepad from Windows will not give you that level of information and will not be helpful in that regard. So every opening tag in HTML should have a closing tag. Oops. So we want to close our title tag. So this basically says, here's my opening tag, and the closing tag, closing tag is actually defined by this slash title. So this is opening, this is closing. So my title is My Cool Web Page. Now, I also want to close my header tag section because now I'm done with my header tags or anything I wanted to put in that header tag section. And again, every single one of these things, HTML, head, title, they're just called tags. They're HTML tags. So I'll kind of interchangeably refer to them as tags and sections because really tags can be sections. It depends on what kind of content you're putting in there. A header tag is more like a section because there are multiple tags that generally speaking fall within the header tag. So to be as clear as possible, header tag section, header section, it's used and it's said many different ways. You say it however you want to say it. I have no specific way I follow, but generally speaking, I just say header tag. I'll just say that. So within our header tag section, we have our title. Now, before we do anything else, we're going to finish up this document, the base document. Now, within each HTML tag, HTML document, you're also going to have a body. So the body defines the content of your document. Anything that goes inside this body tag is the content of your document, right? We're not going to put anything in the body of the document now. One thing I do want to point out in Notepad++, you may have seen just recently that my icon here went from red to black. So basically what this means, when this icon is red, that means that you have pending changes to this document that have not been saved. The easiest way to save this document, since you already have it open and it was based on an existing file, you can just hit the Control S button. You could be your left control or right control, it doesn't matter as long as it's Control and S, or you can go to File and Save. And that will save your document. You may want to save often just because if your computer crashes or whatever the case may be, you don't lose the content of what you had in there. Now, I will say that Notepad++, the one cool feature of Notepad++ is that you technically don't have to save this document. You could close Notepad++ without saving the document, and the next time you open up Notepad++, your unsaved document will just open. That is one of the cool things about Notepad++ is it actually keeps a local copy, if you will, of the content of these documents. So you can create all sorts of tabs in Notepad++ and never physically save them as files or named files on your hard drive, but that content will always reside within the session of Notepad++. I'm not going to get too much into that. Maybe you understood that, maybe you didn't. It doesn't really matter right now. It's just something I wanted to point it out as just a neat feature of Notepad++ that, again, if you think you can get away with using Notepad, you're fine to do that, but Notepad++ certainly has far more features and whatnot than just standard Notepad. So finally, to close out this document, we're going to use our /HTML. So that basically says my HTML document is done. Now, one of the cool things that you may have seen earlier that I was doing is if I click on this end HTML tag, you'll notice that Notepad++ highlights the beginning HTML tag. Same thing for the body, same thing for the title. If I click on the begin HTML tag, it'll show me the end. So if you remove this HTML tag, for example, and you click on this, it doesn't highlight in purple. So that means that a Notepad++ is telling you there's no closing tag for this thing that you just clicked on. So that, when debugging HTML, can be a very neat feature. Also, you'll notice that there's also, in addition to line numbers, Notepad++ also has these section collapsers and expanders. So if I wanted to collapse a section, for example, my body section, I can click on this little negative sign here, and it'll collapse my body section, so I just see the beginning body tag. If I wanted to collapse the head section or head tag section, it just collapsed that. So anything within the head section would be closed. If I want to collapse HTML, I click that, it only shows the HTML. Why you would do that, I have no idea, but it's there. But this can be very meaningful, that if you have a lot of content in any of your one particular sections, and you're not, once you've visited your head tag, for example, and you've made these changes, your chances are you're not going to come back to this very often, so you would just collapse it. So again, it's with the mindset of freeing up screen real estate. So if you have a smaller monitor or whatever the case may be, it'll be easier for you to edit the stuff and just hide the stuff you're not editing constantly. Now, one thing I do like to do, it's not going to mean a whole lot right now, but it does make, in my opinion, it makes documents, HTML documents, a lot easier to read. Right now, you see everything is basically left aligned, and there's not a lot of content in here right now, so it doesn't really matter that much, but you should indent your HTML. Now, generally speaking, like how you indent or what you decide to indent is kind of up to you. For me, the tags I never indent would be HTML, head, and the body. I never indent those, but everything else I indent. And again, it's all based on how your tags are nested. And by nested, I mean tags within tags. So like the title tag here is nested within the head tag. So essentially there's a relationship here. This is a parent, this is a child. So this is a nested tag. The title is nested within the head tag. So nested tags should always be indented. In HTML, you may have like multiple levels of indentation because of how nested your tags are, and that's perfectly fine. If you want to see everything left aligned, that's up to you. But like I said, in my opinion, it's far easier to read the document, especially once everything's indented. All right. So now that we've completed our document and we've done our indentation, now let's go ahead and I'm going to close this browser window. I'm going to open up, double click my bare minimum HTML document. Now, like I said, we didn't put anything in this document, but you will see that originally when we opened this document, the name of the title of the document was bare minimum.html. It was this name here. But now, because of the fact that we actually specified this title of my cool web page is actually the title of the document. And also when I hover over it, it pops up, that's just a feature of the browser. There's nothing special in HTML we had to do to make that happen. It's just the browser just does that. So when you hover over the tab, it just basically pops up the title of the web page.
I hope you learned something watching this video. While we only scratched the surface of HTML, you should now have the skills to create an HTML document, construct the bare minimum HTML required in an HTML document, and view it in a web browser. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more of these in the future as I publish them, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. If you have any questions regarding the video, be sure to leave a comment and I will do my best to reply to as many comments as possible. If you know others who would enjoy this series of videos, be sure to share my channel with them. Stay tuned for HTML Part 2 coming soon.